Hey guys, thanks for following the series, following the channel, subbing, all that stuff. Bear in mind, you may hear a buzzer in this clip because I'm running a space heater here. You can't normally tell, but I'm standing, and all this is kind of like, you know, waist level, and I have a big old space heater in here that'll make this noise. Sorry man, it is way too cold out here otherwise. I mean, I could bundle up, but then that just looks weird to you guys because I'm sure half of you are living in Florida right now and mocking the rest of us. It was about like 4 degrees Fahrenheit when I got out this morning, so yeah, kind of sucks. Anyways, so doing this series gives me a lot of opportunities to kind of reminisce and talk about things that I grew up with, and for me that are normal. For other people it may sound totally weird. One thing that Nutnfancy always went out of his way to do was share what's cool and what's not. So I would grow up with him looking at stuff and going, oh dude, that's so cool, that's awesome. And other stuff he'd go, yeah, no, not so much. And it may seem weird, but if you think about it, most kids don't really have an innate sense of what's cool. You know, most people aren't born with an innate, like, awesome compass. I mean, some people just manage to come with that intact, built in. Like, I don't know, this guy, or this last douchebag. But the rest of us kind of have to figure it out along the way. So he was always really careful to show me things that I should like and that I shouldn't like, just based on, you know, normal criteria. So stuff that he applies to his videos now, you'll see a lot of. You know, whether or not something's functional, whether or not it has good form, whether or not it, I don't know, just it's cool. There are some things that are just second kind of cool and they do that. The point wasn't to just brainwash me into whatever he was thinking. He wanted me to think and evaluate the things in popular culture. If you look, there's actually a whole industry built on convincing kids that stupid crap is awesome.
It's the evil Dreadwing.
I will control the skies!
Control this, Dreadwing! He's bigger than big! He's new Riptor, the biggest, bravest dragon with his flying warrior zenith! Riptor with huge flapping wings and mighty grabbing claws!
Time to kiss the pavement!
Now Riptor rules! The skies are safe! It's time to fly!
Dragonflies, flight is life!
New Dragonfly!
Yo, you wanna ride the string?
Yo, yo!
Yo, this thing!
Yo, Mega!
Spin it, rock it,
Ride it!
In all fairness, I never really got into Pogs or the Dragonflies thing or Beyblades. There's actually going to be a pretty big section that I'm going to do on toys and all that because, dude, I got some pretty cool stuff. This actually extended to a lot of different things. It wasn't just, man, that car's cool, that bike is awesome. It actually extended all the way to girls, so I've grown up with him. Keep in mind, that's why we're kind of like friends. No topic was ever all that taboo for us, so it was not at all unusual for me to be somewhere and then, you know, the waitress would leave and he would just go, now our waitress is super hot, remember that. And I'd be like, okay. It was never, son, I think you need to find a good mate so you can reproduce and continue the lineage. It was always more of, hey, see her, she's super hot. And I go, mm-hmm, or, because we have different flavors in life. That's just the way it is. So if you want to actually try out which one of us you're more like, here's a quick little quiz. Let's see if we can do it in like, I don't know, 5 to 10 seconds. So one side's going to have something that one of us just loves, and the other one's going to have the other guy's opinion of that same type of thing. So let's start it out. Upton, Clark. Ferrari Italia, 599 GTO. F16, A10. Although I would accept A6 because I've loved the Intruder ever since I was a kid. Grilled cheese, not grilled cheese. In all fairness, I really hate grilled cheese. It's not that I hate it, it's just everywhere we've ever gone, he's always asked to try it like it's some kind of litmus test for how tasty a restaurant is. I don't understand that. Check out our Silver Fork Lodge video if you want more details, because I think he had grilled cheese then too. I don't get it. Anyways, I could do a whole section on that, just on the things where we actually diverge. Most stuff we have in common. Stuff like bikes, cars, we still have fairly similar views on. It just depends. Now, I make a lot of weird references to the things that I grew up watching, but it wasn't like I just had this laissez-faire media situation going on. He was actually pretty careful on what he screened. We weren't like, you know, Emily Dickinson style reclusive, but we weren't, I don't know, we just weren't single mom who works all the time and leaves her 11-year-old with the remote all day long. We were somewhere in between. He was careful to screen things and make sure I knew what I was getting into when I was watching things. So while I grew up watching stuff like Predator and Terminator, they kind of had points and he would kind of clear up what I'm supposed to think. I think nowadays we kind of go out of our way and think that perhaps because something doesn't have a lot of nipples in it or a graphic beheading, it must be a-okay for kids. I wouldn't expect a 7-year-old to get the emotional cacophony of noise that goes on through the whole thing, or the whole ideology clash between two unyielding ways of life. They just come away from that thinking that Batman's cool and Joker's cool. So they're gonna walk away going, hey, if I wanna be cool, I'm gonna emulate one or both of those people, which would make a really cool kid, but a very unbalanced adult. But a lot of that was kind of dependent on how I was as a kid. I was actually a pretty nice one. I was kind of blood averse growing up. So he knew that in order to prepare me for life, he'd have to show me stuff that was more realistic. So as soon as it came out, I actually watched Band of Brothers probably like 7 times, which was pretty awesome. And that taught me a lot. I mean, you can watch that. I still tear up like a freaking kid who just saw his puppy get hit by an ice cream truck every time that last episode plays when they're playing baseball. Just impossible. Now, don't think I was super sheltered growing up. I was actually really open to the world, and I was exposed to a lot of things that maybe even I didn't like. For me, he was always more ready to show me stuff like Predator and Terminator because as a kid, I was not naturally violent. I was always really nice and very kind, and I didn't like blood, and I was just a, nice little kid. So for me, he was able to kind of, move that limit of what I was ready to see gore-wise and watch stuff like Predator. But it wasn't just always an entertainment component. He was always careful to show me what was really cool. You kind of help to define a child's childhood by their heroes. So with me, he was always very careful to show me people I could look up to. That's why I grew up reading stuff like Carlos Hathcock's book and, what's that one? P-47 Thunderbolt. About all these guys and people just who didn't give up. And it was all about being tenacious. I didn't come away from Predator just thinking Predator was awesome, which Predator is totally awesome. But I came away thinking about how Schwarzenegger, he didn't give up. He just kept going. Dutch is so cool. And the Predator has a way of honor. And all these stupid things that I pulled out of it. But that being said, I still look up to him today as one of my great idols. I mean, he freaking took on Predator, who was a much superior opponent, with nothing but a freaking sharp stick, a Bowie knife, and mud. That's pretty impressive. And I mean, half the message of Predator is how important it is to pack on body mass. For the more prepper-oriented types, I actually did watch Terminator 2 pretty much monthly as a kid. I didn't really get allowed to watch like the totally awesome version where he always cuts off his hand until I was a little bit older. But I grew up watching scenes like the mag change scene when they're driving around in the car, because that was more of my, in case of fire, break glass function. This scene where he's driving through the car and they're tossing him mags for him to reload for him, that defines a lot of things about how I was brought up. I wasn't brought up to be, some super apocalyptic trigger man. I was brought up to be useful in any emergency. So he had been in places and seen things where, you have people panicking and freaking out. He didn't want one more thing to worry about in an emergency situation. Like we lived through that ice storm. Throughout that whole thing, for me, I just remember going, oh, cool, this is like the stuff he's been telling me about. I'm supposed to be ready. And so that resulted in us just, going about life as normal. Basically turned it into camping. Whereas other kids who aren't prepared for it, who are used to being in that little insular Nerf womb, their entire world is kind of cracked in half when stuff like this happens because they don't have a frame of reference. For me, I just learned, I just got to be like young John Connor. I mean, except for Edward Furlong's voice being horrendous throughout that entire movie, he's pretty cool. He's just calm, collected. Okay, he's kind of a tool, but I mean, he's not that bad. He's not slowing him down during a gunfight. That's pretty good for a freaking kid. Without going into any more, I did love stuff like Jurassic Park. There are all kinds of nice movies too, but I don't really care about those looking back. It's not the stuff that I'm very interested in. Like, I'm never going to go back and go, man, I sure wish I could watch Mr. Holland's Opus again. That was a great movie. Whatever. I'd rather watch Predator, T2, RoboCop, I don't know, maybe 100 more times before I die. All the movies aside, I was always more of a book kid growing up. Not that I spent a ton of time reading, but I was taught to read at an early age, and so that literacy kind of followed me forever. I never went through that weird phase where they're like throwing those little young teen books at you that are basically written for people who are learning English as a second language. I grew up reading stuff like National Geographic from a really early age. We had a life subscription that was kind of gifted from Granddad back in the day, and it still comes, which is pretty cool. But I was never really told that I couldn't read something because it was too advanced for me. I was just left to kind of, do it on my own. I'd figure it out along the way. That's kind of what gave me such a weird hodgepodge vocabulary, because I was reading stuff that was way above my level, and so I just kind of adapted to that. So I grew up reading stuff that, and I only remember my favorites, of course, but like favorite books, Carlos Hathcock's story was awesome. I think it was Bravo 2-0. I read a bunch of times. I read the entire Time Life series up to date on like decades. That's kind of where I get a lot of the pop culture knowledge from. It's pretty much essential reading in this house at this point. I do have other, I showed you in the GIF video, I love stuff like White Fang. I read a ton of Jack London. I love The Little Prince, although I didn't find that until much later. Just a lot of these books I grew up loving. Alas Babylon, that's a great one. They were just part of growing up, you read a book and then you notate it. We'd always pass it around, so our like family library has kind of all of our personal thoughts on certain subjects. I've always found that really cool because you can go through and kind of bond over that book. It's like having a book club across time. So where he may have read something back in the 70s, I read it back in the 90s, and I'd kind of like write it. And I didn't write stupid notes like, wow, cool, I really like how he shoots Jowenko Lava Monster with the Seeker Blaster. That was ill, comma, C-U-Z. That's cuz for the old timers. Never did that. I always kind of selected it and did it in pencil in case you wanted to erase it. Anyways, side notes. But yeah, keep kids literate, man. He was always really careful to make sure I was reading stuff and I was capable and knowledgeable. Always trying to get me to be a functioning pop culture machine in some ways, just that I could talk to anybody. I've never really felt out of place speaking to people. I mean, I've talked to all kinds of different people from different walks of life and different freaking things. I've talked to like people who sail, and that's all they do. People who just like metal work. There's something to be said about someone who can hold a conversation with anyone they come across. It's kind of geisha-esque, but it's really cool to do. Video games growing up, didn't have a ton of experience with them. We did have a Super Nintendo that we bought when I was 7, but there was only one purpose for it and one purpose only. 4-man Battle Royale Bomberman. Usually it was Bomberman 2, and these things get very, very mean. We're actually a pretty good combo of them. It's usually me and Nutnfancy duking it out. Suspect still sucks on it. So does the misses. I mean, they're terrible. I don't know why, because Suspect is like, much more of a gamer than I am, but I will still just wipe his face into the dirt each one of those rounds. And yeah, I'm talking smack. Come bring it next time, bro. One of the best recurring memories I have is just our weekly Saturday, Friday night Bomberman sessions. And over time, it's kind of become a family tradition. People will visit and stuff, people we kind of know, and we always have the saying of Bomberman takes a minute to learn, a lifetime to master. It's kind of our own personal art of war. And it's become this kind of litmus test over the years for girls. Like one notable fail was we had, and I'm using this not in the pop culture terms, but more as the mechanical Department of Defense thing, as in it's a critical fail that exempts something from even being in the competitive carbine competition. This girl was sitting there, she kept trying to like toss the bombs over the wall, and she couldn't do it, so he started telling her, he's like, no, all you gotta do, she cuts him off mid-sentence and just says, you know what? I don't need any of your help, okay? And the unnerving silence of all of our telepathic communication as we made eye contact just basically said, this girl's not gonna get another date after this. So that's a heads up. If you ever play Bomberman with us, it gets raw. And that's not to say that I never ended up playing video games, but to me it was always more of a social experience. It was something that you did with people, not so much a 9.5-hour masturbatory quest of fetching things in whatever fantasy role-playing game you're doing. I've kind of grown into a weird funk where I'm not that much of a fan of games, but I like the really well done ones. I'm more of someone who uses it once in a while. I'll pop in BioShock and go, oh cool, I can't wait for a new interesting story. I kind of consume it like old people consume movies. It's a form of escapism, but not really a hobby. There's something that I get really offended about whenever a game has me do stupid-ass crap that I have to do in reality. Like anytime you give me a job and say, go through the door, and then I get to the door and you say, now go find the 4 key pieces, I will toss my controller so far into the console, it comes out the other side. I'm a human person with a life. I don't have time to do the dev's job of putting keys together. Just give me the damn key, put me at the door, give me a good gun, and let me kill Jowenko the lava monster. Then again, I could always talk about the things I hate in games. Notably, helicopter crashes don't seem to kill anybody. You always just kind of crawl out of the wreckage, look at your hands like this to show you that, whoa, we render hands now! And then you just go on your merry way, destroying an entire legion of bad guys. super realistic, them helicopter crashes. Alright, that's it for this one. Thanks for subbing, thanks for watching. I accidentally deleted the rest of the card before I could do the outro, so it's kind of a reshoot. Let me know how you like this one, and I'll kind of decide whether or not to do more. I'm curious as to how interesting this series could be. There are some other things I'd also like to do, so let me know how much you liked it. As usual, I'm going to do the comments for about a week from the point of this posting, so watch for it then. After that, I'll usually move on to the next one. I just do the most recent upload. Cool talking with you guys. Yep, see you around.